You want details? Fine. I drive a Ferrari 355 Cabriolet. What's up? I have a ridiculous house in the South Fork. I have every toy you can possibly imagine. And best of all, kids, I am liquid. So, now you know what's possible. Let me tell you what's required.
Life advice, again, is lifeadvicerr@gmail.com. Okay, this guy wants to offer up his name. We're not going to do it. All right, he's 21, small town in Southwest Virginia, and he's attending a local college. Because I lived in a small town, Southwest Virginia, my whole life. My mother and father and twin sister for my entire life. My sister left for college. She attends an expensive private school, which played a large role in my decision to stay home and attend college locally. Parents are both lawyers, and contrary to what you're probably thinking, my upbringing has been far from silver spoon. My father is a narcissistic alcoholic, and my mother is an antisocial recluse. They haven't slept in the same bed since my sister and I were born, and the paucity of communication that occurs between them is contentious and forced. Though this sounds harsh, I love both of them, and I'm cognizant of the financial sacrifices they have made for both of us. By the way, can you ever imagine thinking, like, when you think of all the relationships you have in your life, where you go, this guy's a one-way street, or I always have to be here emotionally for this person, and they're not there for me, or, I always get to hear about this guy's problems. Like, one of the things that when people will ask, I'm worried I'm bringing up some of my problems too much to my friends. Well, if you're aware of it, then you definitely are. Okay. If you're going, do I do this too much? Then the answer is yes. And one of my favorite things to ask yourself is this, is when you think about all of your stuff, would you want to hang out with you? And if the answer is yes, great. And if it's no, then you got some stuff to fix. So, this was just one of those things with parents, though, where I think of, if you really add up the math on it, not only the reproductive part of it, the giving us all life, but having to deal with, like, a couple of my friends who had kids later on, they're like, I almost want to write a letter to my parents thanking them. Like, I didn't realize how much of a hassle this was. And I was kind of like, you didn't realize that it was sort of a significant thing that was going to alter your life, and like every decision being made for that person. Like, think about that. There's really only like two people, and it depends on if you have both parents in your life. Maybe it's one person that is made, or maybe you just have terrible parents or parent who remain selfish despite parenting. And look, there's all of these options out there. But for the good parents, not even the great ones, but for the good parents, it's, yes, actually, once I had you, every decision I made was because of you. So shout out to the parents out there. Okay. I don't want to sound ungrateful because financially we've been more privileged than most. However, this does not change the fact that relationship led to a toxic upbringing and is the root of several issues I'm concerned I may never be able to overcome. I would humbly consider myself to be gregarious and affable, and a great writer, by the way. This is just a stellar email. Kyle, I know you're over there freaking out about some of the words we got here. Or maybe not. Okay, relating to my father much more than my mother, I'm extremely self-conscious, and I'm always sure to take into account how others feel so as not to follow my father's narcissistic footsteps. I would also consider myself to be somewhere in between you and Chris Long on the scale of physical appearance. So what? Hot? Is it wicked hot? Cool. Which makes it extremely concerning and peculiar that in 21 years, I've yet to be involved in a committed relationship. The problem arises that I'm capable of being vulnerable, have incorrigible trust issues, and I'm inherently skeptical of others' intentions. I understand that as a young adult, my responsibility to diagnose these issues and work on them, as opposed to blaming my upbringing so they not persist to become lifelong ailments. However, it's proving extremely difficult to overcome. My sister seems to have no interest in relationships and is content blaming our home environment for these issues, but as someone who doesn't cringe at the thought of a family in the future, I felt it necessary to work on these things. Okay, so he's got another paragraph here, and I'll get to that in a second. All right, so look, there's some similarities here because of my upbringing, and that I know, it's kind of weird even reading this email because, I haven't thought about a family the way most of my friends have thought about a family. And I don't know if that's because of the way I was brought up. I would point out that, my sister, who I'm pretty close with, who's closest in age to me, she's, she, like me, is probably like not in a hurry to just be opening up to people left and right. So, I don't want to spend too much time talking about my sister, but I can understand that you grow up in this deal. It's not a lot of love at home, and then it impacts you in a little bit. But as you point out, and you already know, and as any therapist say, like some therapists, it's like, oh, you don't want to be like your parents. You're like, yeah, no shit, man. Like, great, congrats. You unlocked the key to all this stuff, Dr. Melfi. But the fact that you're like, all right, I'm not in a relationship, I have trust issues and all these different things, none of that's ever going to change just being by yourself all the time. Okay. Because it's actually pretty amazing if you do give yourself a chance and all of a sudden you do trust somebody and you're like, wow, this is great. Like, I actually think this person has my back all the time. Like, it will eventually happen. Maybe you'll have a couple bad relationships on the way. But just to say, hey, I'm going to shut it down, like, you're clearly very smart. You're pursuing some of these other things. So why would you go, all right, hey, I've identified the problem, which you have. I know the root of it. Okay. My sister's worse about it than I am. Okay. As much as you can feel bad for your sister and wish she didn't have, like, think about it. You're looking at your sister wishing that she looked at life differently, while you also are kind of more in line with your own sister and the way she looks at relationships. So none of this is ever going to change. I mean, it is really, really simple. You just have to try. You just have to try to start being with some people, because the other option is you could do this. You can be with some people and not have it work out and still have trust issues, or you can be by yourself forever and still have the same trust issues and never even try. So that seems like a pretty easy one. Now, on top of all of this, senior in college, torn between law school and pursuing a career in sports media, I've always been infatuated with college and pro sports. And though I was above average athlete in high school, realized Division I athletics weren't for me, made the decision to hang it up after school. You probably didn't make the decision as much as the schools, much like me. I don't tell people I retired from basketball. I have a big personality, feel I'm extremely capable of being successful in the sports industry, but also where the odds are stacked against me as someone who didn't play professionally or notable university. You don't have to play, man. You don't. All right. 3.8 GPA, did well in the LSAT. Decided to, expecting to do well in the LSAT. I guess you would. I would think you would. You seem smart. If I decided to take it, but I'm sure which path I should follow. I realize the likelihood of financial stability is exponentially higher if I chose to go to law school. However, that also heightens the risk of eternal misery. With that being said, hey, man, take a deep breath first before anything. With that being said, my question to you as someone who's reached the pinnacle of the industry is how to get my foot in the door if I choose a sports media route. Would you suggest grad school for sports communication or internship at a media outlet or both? Love the pod. Thanks in advance for advice. Okay, this may not work out for you, but this is very specific advice. I would pursue the LSAT. I would take it, do well, as you said, because I think you will, and start that process while also dipping your toes in the media thing. And I know some people that are in the league will be like, hey, you're not going to have any time for it. You're not going to have any time. You're not going to have any time. Here's what I'm going to tell you. For everybody that wants to pursue the cool thing, writing, acting, music, being on air for sports, it's so rough. And by the way, I don't even know that I'd advise a ton of people to get into it, considering the numbers. And then we just had another round of layoffs at ESPN, which, every time it happens, it just makes me feel awful for friends and people that I've worked with and how tough it is in this industry right now. The numbers are not great. The number of people coming out of schools hoping to be in content versus the number of places that is there'll be some pop-up, there'll be something that starts up. Hey, there's 100 new jobs. Everybody's all excited about it. And then you're like, okay, but if they don't make a ton of money right away, or they don't project to be profitable, like, those jobs could just kind of disappear. And it feels like in the last couple of years, more jobs have disappeared than we've added to this industry. So that's just being 100% real on this. Now, if you still want to do this, here's the great advantage you're going to have. And this is something I've always said, is that when you want to do all those things, like, I had to swing a hammer and bartend to pursue the cool thing. So if you have something that allows you some more financial stability while still pursuing the thing that you're passionate about in sports, and you don't even know this yet. I mean, you're 21, you may get into TV, not be on TV, but you could get into behind the scenes and go, actually, this kind of sucks. Like, I'm not super impressed with the people that I'm around. So maybe this isn't for me. But what I do is I would look, once you pass the LSAT and interview with different firms, I would tell you to try to go somewhere and then ask. I know this is a lot of work, but ask and be like, hey, do you have any kind of thing on the weekend where I could intern or just hang around for a couple hours to see how this works? Because you're now actually not a threat. They're going to be like, this guy's going to be a lawyer, but he wants to be around this a little bit. You can seem like it's impossible with your schedule. If you think it's impossible with your schedule, then you don't really want it bad enough. But I would tell you, get the legal stuff, get yourself set up for that so you have it. Because if you just go all media for 5 years and it doesn't work out, you'll have something to pivot back to. But I cannot express this enough. If you want to pursue the cool shit, you're probably going to have to find a way to also get yourself, I'm not even talking stable financially. I'm talking week to week, living off a check. So there's some kind of money coming in. Because the quicker the money disappears, the quicker you have to give up on all the cool things you want to do. Like, when people move to LA and be like, oh, I'm going to be an actor, I got a year's worth of money. Be like, all right, well, are you going to work? I'm like, no, the money will last me a year if it doesn't. But why would you do that? Why would you only give yourself a year? Why wouldn't you do something on the side to get a little bit of money coming in so that you can pursue the dream a little bit longer? You have an awesome option that's a real world option that could probably put you in position to, I have no idea why you wouldn't do it. Like, some people will probably listen to this and be like, why would you take the LSATs, join a firm, and then say, oh, by the way, I'm traveling around with Chuck Cooper of Weekend Sports. Is there a Chuck Cooper? I think there is. But you know what I'm saying? I don't think any of this stuff is impossible. You just make those calls. And when somebody goes, what, are you serious? You just go, yeah, I am serious. This is what I'm going to do. All right, hit us up. Please subscribe, rate and review the Ryen Russillo Podcast, the Ringer Podcast Network. And we got some cool stuff coming up in the NBA draft, a big Ringer show that we'll be doing next week as well for that. All right, everybody, have a great week.